back to Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo. Today's guest is a very, very special one. He is a fifth place finisher at the Dallas Europa show that took place 2 weeks ago. But more importantly, he's got a great story to tell, and I love great stories. So it's my pleasure to bring in Eddie Papiro. Welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Eddie, you got a great story, and I love stories that kind of coincide with the success in competition. And obviously, placing fifth at a pro show is a success in my book, and I know that you're thrilled to death with it, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much so.
Especially at the age of 39.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a spring chicken, Dave.
You started late. Let's go back for a second. How did you originally get involved in the whole bodybuilding scene?
For me, it was a good outlet. Coming from a wrestling background, I happen to be friends with my coach, who you guys probably know, Fred Smalls.
Fred
so
Biggie
it was just
Smalls.
a natural progression to end up in the gym, and one thing led to another, and I did become a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm. Fred Biggie Smalls, of course, a very good friend to the show, to me, and one of the most entertaining posers on stage. So he's helping you out. But, tell us your story, because I think that, I'm a new parent. I have a 3-year-old, I have a 1-year-old, and I have a new one, coming in September. And so I didn't really have an appreciation for kids and what you go through with kids and the trials and the tribulations and when your kid gets sick and how you feel and how it affects you, because I was just living that sheltered, selfish lifestyle. You have 2 sons, and something happened, and I want you to tell the story because it's an incredible story.
Okay, so my oldest son, at 6 months old, was diagnosed with a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis. That's a lot to say.
Yes. What is it? Tell us what it is.
It's a condition that gives a lack of vision, of tunnel vision. It eventually would deteriorate to nothing. He has degenerating rods and cones in the back of his eyes. So at 6 months old, we got this diagnosis. They informed us that they were doing testing on animals at that point, and they had hoped that, before he was around 10 years old, they would be moved into a human phase.
Now let me stop you for a minute, because basically what the diagnosis is, you're going to go blind, basically.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
yes, sir. Around 20 years old or so.
Right. And so that's a terrible diagnosis as a parent to hear that your child is going to lose his vision. So what's going through your mind and your wife's mind at this point?
Dave, as a parent, it was crippling because, you imagine to be able to protect your children. I will say, though, in hindsight, and I do remember it very distinctly, when they told me that their cognitive ability was fine, I knew that everything would be okay. I wrestle. I'm very short. We weren't going to be a basketball player or a football player.
Right.
And Stevie Wonder's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So I knew that the future would be good for them. They were born to very strong parents, and they were born in a country that things are available. There's research going on. There's different health insurance programs. There's just things to help them out.
Right.
So it was tough, but that's kind of what my initial push was to get into the gym. Instead of being miserable, I decided to build a platform through bodybuilding to make my voice larger so that I could do some work to help my own family and those other families in the visually impaired community.
Right. Now, your son eventually does get into some kind of a study. Explain what it is and how you got him into this thing.
So we got him into a clinical trial at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where they were experimenting with gene therapy and injecting it into the eyes of dogs and having incredible results. They were able to get licensing to do it on one person, which led to quite a few more people, which led to my son being accepted into the clinical trial. At 6 years old, he was the youngest patient in Philadelphia to ever be treated.
Wow.
And then now, 6 years later, the results are still very consistent with his original testing. He has not lost any vision. He has increased his night vision and his peripherals by about 1,000%. He still is legally blind, but he will never go totally blind.
Right. That's amazing. Now, when you say legally blind, how much could, like, if he was just in a room with people, could he make out, what the faces were and stuff like that?
Yes, he can now. Before his treatment, he couldn't. After his treatment, some very profound things happened. He was able to see the detail in his mother's face.
Wow.
He could see that her hair had highlights in it. Just very basic stuff, man. He could hit a baseball that he could never do before.
Amazing.
And he's also, my oldest son is the only visually impaired runner in our state. He runs the 1600, the 800, and he's also into the cross country, which is his favorite.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome.
So those things all became available for him, Dave, after his treatment.
Wow. Now, did they treat both eyes at the same time, or they treat one and then the other? How did they do that?
They did the first eye, and then 11 days later they do the second, just in case if there's a complication. It would probably be, obviously better to have one eye that's going bad than two blind eyes right away.
Right. Now, how do they put these cells in? Do they go right through the eyeball? What do they do?
Yeah, I hate to quote the word, but I think it's called a laparoscopy. My wife's going to kill me. But it just it's just a needle they put right into the eye.
Right.
They inject the serum, and then they close that off with like an oil bubble. It's very similar, I was told, to like a cataract surgery.
Okay.
It's outpatient. You're sedated, and then home to rest and lay on your side for 48 hours the same night.
So is it basically
very incredible?
Is it basically stem cells or it's gene therapy?
It's very similar to that. In the U.S., we use a lot of gene therapy just because of all of the hoopla with stem cell.
Yeah.
So it is. It's like no religious, none of that going on. It's
Gotcha.
just pure science. There's no. They create the gene. They use they clean out the inside of a germ to inject it into the eye.
Right.
It attacks what it thinks is the rods and cones to cause damage, but it delivers the gene therapy, the treatment, the serum to the eye.
That's awesome. And then to make matters even more complicated in your life, you find out your youngest son has the same exact condition.
Yeah, so we had we had another 6-month-old and a 6-year-old at the so Anthony's 13 and 9. So what is the difference? They're 5. So 5 and 6 months old. We hear that our youngest son has it as well. Selfishly, I kind of hoped that he would have it, just so that one didn't leave the other. So one son wasn't in the light and one was in the dark. I thought it would be safer if they both had the same condition, and they did.
Wow.
My wife and I carry the gene.
So it's
we have
genetic.
a 25% chance.
So you're both carriers. What a coincidence that is. It's such a rare condition. You both were carriers for it.
Yeah, they know mathematically that the condition occurs roughly 3,000 times throughout the population, which is a little over 7 billion. Mm-hmm. So I am the only person with 2 children that have this and have had the treatment.
Well, and successfully have had the treatment. Which one had better results? Are they comparable?
I think they're very comparable. Unfortunately, my oldest son has poor vision regardless. My wife wears glasses.
Oh, okay.
So his eyes just aren't as strong as his little brother's.
Mm-hmm.
But very drastic difference between what they formerly could see compared to now. My youngest son, he received it at 8 years old, so he could articulate a little more how well it worked. He wasn't as young as my oldest. He compared it to coming in the house and having sunglasses on.
Gotcha.
In the work truck, he said it's like looking out the windshield versus the tinted windows is how much brighter things are.
Wow.
So it's just incredible.
Yeah. So you take this, obviously, I mean, this has got to be rough as a parent going through this because it's a continual process. And meanwhile, in the background, you're kind of bodybuilding and you're saying to yourself, I'm going to compete. When did you finally pull the trigger and say, you know what? All right, I'm ready.
I trained myself for a little bit coming off of 2015's wrestling season. So for my birthday, April, May, right in there, I hired Fred again full time. So 2016 would be when I fully got engaged in it. Mm-hmm. I competed that October, and then again in January and or June of 2017, July of 2017. At that point, I had won Team Universe.
That's awesome.
So it was like a 9-month run.
So you win Team Universe, which is great. Okay, you get your pro card at Team Universe in the Masters 35-0, but people say, oh, you won the Masters.
That's what they said.
Great, now you got a pro card. What are you going to do with it? Now you obviously don't stop there. You say, I'm going to compete as a pro. I don't care if I'm 39 years old, and if I got my pro card as a master. And just this past week in Dallas, you wind up placing top 5 at a pro show. How amazing does that feel?
It was definitely a goal. My biggest goals were to prove that I was, able to compete at this level. which I did last year. I did my best finish last year was I got 12th in Tampa, which I thought was a pretty good showing. I was 15th in my pro debut at the New York Pro. But to catch that top 5, I mean, I trained hard for that. I was in New York this year. I missed the mark by a little bit. We still had a little fat. It was a film on us. So it was another big 3-week push, and I was just blown away by the results in Dallas this weekend.
What'd you weigh on stage?
I was 192.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't the biggest. You certainly weren't the biggest guy in the class.
No, sir. No, sir. But I think my conditioning was right up there.
Absolutely.
I definitely look up to Hide, so I was more than proud to be able to stand next to him and have my hamstrings out and everything sliced and diced.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, you competing with top level 212 pros on that stage, and
Yes,
here
sir.
you are. It was you weren't even when these guys were really getting their start. You weren't even bodybuilding. You
Wasn't even lifting weights then. No, sir.
You were wrestling. Coaching people wrestling.
Yes, sir.
What a story! That's
Yeah,
a
it's
great.
pretty neat, right?
It's a great, I mean, you set a great example for your kids too. That if you set your mind to something, you could accomplish anything.
I kind of I have like this little mantra that I always say to everyone. Like I'm not doing something that you can. I'm just doing something you haven't. I want everyone to feel like they're capable of doing great things. I mean, you should believe in yourself simply because you woke up today.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I don't know if you know Brian Dobson from Tech. Ronnie Coleman's gym, Metroflex, and you remind me of Brian Dobson so much. Not even just the way you talk, you actually look like him too.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I just was watching Samir on Instagram. He was over there training. It's like a childhood dream to get there.
You got to go there. You guys are like, I think, long lost brothers.
Yeah. Hey, man, listen. I'll come down and train. We can find out if we're related.
That's right. He's all about motivation too. So, look, you got a great story. What's next for you? What do you want to do? Are you going to do another show this year?
I'm gonna help my teammate Akil Dix. He's my training partner.
Okay.
I'm gonna push him hard. He wants to compete at Legion Sports Fest. Freddie wants to go to Romania, and I'm gonna put enough size on my back to win a show this year.
Okay, so you're not done.
I don't think I'm gonna compete again until 2020.
Okay. All right. So you're off.
So
you're done for the
that's
year.
my goal, is to do some growing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, Eddie, you got a great story, man. Congratulations. I'm so happy to hear that your sons, were successful in this trial. And, maybe other people who might be watching the show who know kids or maybe have their own kids who have experienced this can actually,
reach out to me, man. I answer every direct message, Dave.
Yeah. This is a great message.
I answer every message that comes my way. If anyone has a question or anything, I always say in this day and age, man, there's people that have conditions and people that are out there helping. And with all this social media and technology, we should be able to contact each other.
What's the best way to get in touch with you?
On Instagram, at steady_33.
All right. Well, once again, congratulations. Stick in there with Big Fred Smalls. You can't go wrong. Great guy. We love him. And maybe he could teach you that jump move.
I'm working on it, Dave.
Someone's got to take over for Fred when he
I might be a little too
stops.
old for those toe touches.
Great talking to you.
I totally appreciate you, man. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, guys. And that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.